Such. I'm Jude Kovac, and today Dylan and I are talking with Jonathan Easley from the Western Bigfoot Exploration. This guy really knows his stuff. So, Jonathan, how are you doing?
Doing pretty good. Out here in Long Beach, California. I do most of my research out here on the West Coast. So I have ventured into the Sierras and been to Northern California and stuff. But yeah, doing good. Starting off my morning on the right foot.
That's great.
Yeah, that's great. And let's get started. So, the first question that we have for you is, when did you start becoming interested in Bigfoot research, and what interested you?
So let's see, around 2000, I'd say 14, 15-ish, I got really interested in the subject. At that point, I was already an avid hiker, started backpacking as well. So I was familiar with the outdoors. And there were a couple instances where you think you might have heard something, think you might have saw something, and it kind of draws you down into, let's look this up and see what's out there. And all of a sudden you run into, oh, there's a show called Finding Bigfoot. And these guys all go out there and research, and then you find that you kind of go down the wormhole, I guess, on the on online, which I think everybody's done, right? And you go down this wormhole and you see that there's this ample amount of information out there, but you start to realize that, like, over the years, like 90-something% of it is just absolutely fake. But there's this small amount of evidence, and there's a certain amount of these legit people that are onto something, and they're legit, they're humble, they know their stuff, and they're very interested in it, they're passionate about it, and they're not out there hoaxing, and they're really neat to like bounce information off of. And you start to kind of connect with those people if you can. It takes a long time to, but and then you get out to, you learn about these hot spots, that have been going on, whether it's previous sightings or active research that's going on in an area, and you get chit-chatting with them. And they invite you out, which is what happened to me in 2015. They invited me out to the Plumas National Forest. I went up there, and it was kind of a crazy weekend. And I'll say I haven't had a weekend like that one in a long time. And I remember going, is this how it always is? And it's not like that. But yeah, started out then 2015-ish, and here I am now, still trying to gather as much evidence as I can, or just have experiences, like I say.
Yeah, that's really cool. Obviously, Bigfoot is a really unique creature, but what do you think is the most interesting, or what's the most unique thing about Bigfoot in your opinion?
Well, the most unique thing is that it's a species that has managed to stay out of the eye of science all this time. Now, if you look at other animals that did that, other animals did that for a very long time, like the lowland mountain gorilla. Westerners didn't know what a gorilla was or anything until like the mid 1900s or maybe early 1900s. It took that long, and if you go back and you really look at it, there's a lot of parallels with the stories of gorillas and the stories of what we're encountering right now with Bigfoot. These Europeans would go into these African towns, and they'd hear all these stories about these humanoids that live up in the mountains, and they'd go up there and look for them. They wouldn't see anything for a long time. They'd write about them in books, and it was kind of a myth for a while until someone went up there with some tribesmen and I guess bagged one. And all of a sudden, everybody knew what the mountain gorilla was. During that same time frame, you had all those tribes that knew about the mountain gorillas out there in Africa, but also over here, you had tribes also talking about something that's very similar, and you see it in the Native American art, you see it in their folklore, you see it in their stories, tribal dances, and all that stuff. There's an ample amount of information about that. That's gone on for thousands of years, only we've never had that one instance where we found where they are. And I think that's because they're a much smarter species than gorilla. I think I don't know, this is just a guess, but there must be somewhere between a gorilla and us. Like you have all these, chimps, apes, bonobos, all the way up. And then you got gorilla being the most intelligent and biggest one and most similar to us. And then all of a sudden, there's something in the middle that we just haven't discovered yet, and it's leaving footprints all over the place. And hopefully we find one day. But I think it's it's on the cusp right there. But yeah, it's definitely neat how they're so elusive, and science hasn't pulled one in yet.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a bunch of different theories on why it's so elusive. Some people think it could be supernatural, as we've discussed. Dylan, we've discussed that before.
Hmm.
Some people believe that um, it has some, like I said, supernatural powers, and then some people think it's just because it lives so deep into the woods that it's just very, very difficult to find. And do you think that Bigfoot and other cryptids might end up becoming a trend or something that people are interested in? Because recently there's been a few new Bigfoot shows out and cryptid zoology shows. And I'm wondering, do you think cryptid zoology is going to become something that people end up being extremely interested in?
Yeah, I think they already have been. So when I first got into it, I got into it like right when the whole Finding Bigfoot thing came out, and everybody knew it was the number one show on Animal Planet. So like you talk to like coworkers at work and family friends and stuff like that, and yeah, they're like, "Oh, Bigfoot, yeah, I've seen it on Animal Planet." You know, it was it became popular, but prior to that, it was like a real niche subject. Like there were only a few people that were really out there searching for it, and they'd connect at these conferences, and it there wasn't this mass popularity like there is today, you know. So I think once Finding Bigfoot came out and other shows like, you know, you got this Expedition Bigfoot, and then you got all these offspins and offshoots, and you know, these horrible movies, you know, coming out that are hard to sit through and watch. But yeah, there was like this explosion of popularity, and I think that a lot of people, both good people too, a lot of good researchers came of it. You know, people got really interested in it, and like once it became popular, you had some really. We're lucky to have some really good spokesmen like Cliff Barackman,
Hmm.
for example, Dr. Jeff Meldrum of today, where we can look at them and look at their work and what they've found and what they think, and we can go out and kind of bounce their ideas off on our field work. But yeah, once there's definitely a big population boom going on right now, and I've noticed it kind of dwindle since Finding Bigfoot started. I think that's what made it so popular, that TV show. And yeah, but a lot of good came of it. A lot of good came of it. You also had a lot of bad, because you know, sometimes you're out there doing calls and you're not sure if it's someone else doing calls back, because now they know what Bigfoot calls sound like, and they know what knocks, and they know, you know. So I wonder how many times researchers are in two different places doing calls to each other.
Yeah, they could be like, "That's a Bigfoot," and then it's just somebody else looking for Sasquatch as well, and they're just calling back because
Hmm.
it's kind of like they both think that they're.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, I'm thinking because Oklahoma, I'm not sure if you heard about this, but they're thinking about Oklahoma's become very, very interested in Bigfoot recently.
Mhm.
And what do you think about that? Do you think it's just like the start of a new era of people being more and more interested in it?
Well, Oklahoma, you got the NWAC out there, and they're one of the very few people that I think are legit and they know what they're doing.
Hmm.
They have a ton of stories, have just a handful of evidence, but they're Oklahoma's a pretty squashy place where these guys go, and I've seen them featured on a few shows and all that. I've listened to them speak on a few other podcasts, and I don't know if you guys familiar with NWAC, NAWAC, North American Wood Ape Conservancy. They're
I
based in
think I've heard
Oklahoma.
of that.
They're an awesome research group. If you haven't looked them up, look them up. Um,
Hmm.
they're they are how I imagined every Bigfoot researcher being, but it was a total opposite. But yeah, you know, it's funny. Every state you go to now has like their Bigfoot gift shop.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Like anywhere where there's woods, they're like selling you Bigfoot stuff now, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So, like you said, you know, it's become massively popular over the last few years.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, but Oklahoma's pretty cool. I would like to
Yeah.
one day get out there. It's one of those spots.
Do you think that there are any other cryptids that might be real, like the Loch Ness monster or the Chupacabra?
El Chupacabra. Yeah, I remember that when in the '90s when that thing was like rampant. There was like there was so many like reports on it. You could listen to like a radio show, Coast to Coast AM. Not sure if
Mhm.
you guys ever heard that, but we listened to that, and you'd hear all kinds of crazy stories of people seeing it. And but no, as far as other cryptids, the thing is that I don't see the evidence that you see with Bigfoot. Like I don't see footprints from El Chupacabra. I don't see
Yeah.
pieces of, I don't know, footage from the Loch Ness monster. But I have heard one person say that up in BC they watched a lake monster for a few minutes, and that person, the way they said it, and the person that they are, as honest as they are, it just made me reconsider that maybe there is something. I mean, some of those locks, some of those places are 300, 400 feet deep. Something could be living in there. Who knows? But other cryptids, I just don't see the evidence. I don't see it being as intriguing. And plus, I can't go look for like lake monsters because I'm not the
Yeah.
best swimmer. And
Yeah.
but I can hike, and Bigfoot's out there supposedly in the forest. So it's more likely that you'd have an encounter with that than you would like a lake monster of some sort, in my opinion. Mothman, those stories are always cool. I love reading about them, love hearing about them. I talked to my grandpa who grew up in Ohio, and he used to have a few trapping lines, and he swears up and down every time you mention Mount Mothman. He goes, it's a big owl. And well, how big? And he swore that he's seen owls between 4, like about 4.5, 5 feet tall.
Wow.
And he's huge wingspans, and of course their eyes glow whenever you shine light at them. So he's convinced that that's what Mothman was. That's what everybody saw. But there's a lot more to that, and it's always cool to hear about. But I think Bigfoot's the one that we're on the cusp of finding, and it's the most plausible for a person like you and I to go out on a hike and try to find.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's also just a lot of sightings. Like you said earlier, a lot of those sightings aren't legit.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's definitely more Bigfoot sightings than El Chupacabra sightings, Loch Ness monster sightings. And a lot of Loch Ness monster sightings are they're not very descriptive, like at all. For example, with Bigfoot, you have very detailed descriptions such as matted fur, a very bad smell, like exact height description. They can tell you exactly how tall it was based on how tall they are in the trees and stuff.
Yeah.
With
And
like
then,
Loch Ness, oh, sorry, you go first.
oh no, I was just saying like and there's also correlations between like the Native American tribes reporting it for 1,000 years, and those descriptions matching up with what people are seeing today, and then
Yeah.
people seeing things in Florida and seeing things in the Pacific Northwest 100 years ago, and they're just both describing the same thing. I'm not sure that happened with many other cryptids.
Yeah,
So,
that have.
also, you don't have PhD. How many PhDs do you have out there going, oh well, Mothman, and this is its footprint, and let me tell you all about the footprint. I got this footprint right here. This is a Patterson Gimlin replica. I've never seen a replica of any evidence for any other cryptid in as much detail as this, with several PhDs like John Bindernagel, Jeff Meldrum, and a few others giving pretty elaborate explanations as to what their findings are. So I think that's also why.
Yeah, definitely. And so yeah, I think that Bigfoot descriptions, like you said just a second ago, they match up perfectly with what Native Americans were saying thousands of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
From like just a description of like cave paintings that we found, it just matches up perfectly with what people are reporting today. And so a few weeks ago, we interviewed Tate Hieronymus, and he says that he knows you pretty well. So is there any work that you've done with the Bluff Creek project?
So I didn't do work with them. I did meet up with them because like I said, when you first go down this whole wormhole, you start to make kind of a process of elimination of who you think in your eyes is legit and who you think is not. And that list dwindles down to just a few people. And as far as groups that were very intriguing, there's the NAWC in Oklahoma. There's a bunch of individual got individual researchers that I think were really neat. But the Bluff Creek Project, they've been out there. Oh man, they have videos up from like 2006 or 2007 or something like that, you know, before like throwing your stuff up on YouTube was even cool. And it's so cool that I was amazed by their work, that they went into what is now a jungle and found this film site that looks nothing like it does on the video. And not only is it cool to go, oh, okay, well, there it is. It's not like a geocache thing. No, because now we have what I think is a totally legit film of a Sasquatch. And you're able to measure out where it walked. You're able to measure out where Roger Patterson stood. And ultimately, we just found out how tall Patty was. Cliff Barackman, what he did is he took one of these casts here and he took one of the frames and he matched it up, right? So he blew up Patty's image and matched up this footprint to where it finally sized up. And it looks like Patty's only like maybe 6'2" or something. But you know how tall she is. She's still super wide. But so through rediscovering the film site, you learn so much about probably the most well-documented sighting in history. And so I went down there. I got in contact with a couple of the guys, and I went down there a couple years ago, saw it for myself. But it's not only seeing the film site, it's seeing the entire area, because the entire area has stories to it. You know, from where Jerry Crew pulled out that track, and you know the AP press ran the story nationwide with his picture, you know, with the footprint. From that all the way on to the Patterson Gimlin film, and you know there's still tons of sightings up there, and there were sightings before that too. So it's a really neat area. I went up there. I met up with a couple of guys from the Bluff Creek Project the first time, and the second time I met up with more of them, and it was just so cool to just go up down there and learn for everything that they've found directly from them. You know, you're not looking at it through a video anymore. Now you're there and they're telling you the history. Would this happen here? That happened there. And then you're actually, they're going, this log is this log in the picture. And this one is this one. And you start to size it up and you go, oh my God. And there's a moment where it hits you. Oh my gosh, this is it. I'm actually here. And although it looks like a jungle now, once you pick out those couple stumps and you stand there and you can see the background trees and where the dirt becomes a grassy incline, or as bushes with incline and trees in the background. Once you see that, you're like, oh wow, I'm here and this is it. But yeah, and I met Tate up there, and we did some cool stuff. We went out to Onion Lake, camped out, and but yeah, it was a really, really, really neat weekend. But they're a bunch of cool guys and loaded with information. And I think it's really cool that they've rediscovered the Patterson Gimlin film site.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you guys think about the Patterson film? Huh? No, I mean, I'm not doing the question asking here, but
yeah. So I am very interested in Sasquatch footage, such as the Patterson Gimlin film. Yeah, and such as the Patterson Gimlin film, the Freeman footage, clips like that. And I think what's really interesting about the Patterson Gimlin footage, film especially, is with the Sasquatch footprints with people that did believe in Bigfoot back then, which weren't many. The people that did believe in Bigfoot assumed that Bigfoot had flat feet, because of that one guy, Ray, I forget his last name, but
Ray Wallace.
Ray Wallace, and he would strap like these flat feet to his feet. He would strap the flat feet to the bottom of his shoes. He would just tromp around. So people back then thought that Sasquatch feet were flat. So Bob Gimlin and Roger Patterson were taking a very big risk with this new footprint that they had with that divot in the middle of Patty's footprint, because if anything, if they were trying to fake it, you'd want to match up with what people have seen recently.
Correct.
So people would be like, oh, yeah, then that's probably what's making all those tracks, but no, they had Patty made a new footprint that people haven't really seen before with that one divot in the middle.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, so with them, like first of all, with Ray Wallace, it's kind of a funny story with that guy. Like he started out, and I read all about him in a few places. Um, he's kind of like the OG master hoaxer.
Yeah.
So he made these footprints, and somebody else carved them actually, I think. And then he said he used them, but once he passed away, his son said, "Yeah, we're the ones that, he's the one that did it. Our dad did it." And so there's a very rare newspaper clipping where a local reporter actually challenged them. Okay, well, show me how it was done, because they had this explanation, and they said that they got on the back of a truck with like a bar on it, and the truck would like move at like certain miles per hour, and they would kind of hop and skip with these footprints, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, so the reporter goes, "Okay, go ahead." And they started, and the footprints lasted like two steps. So the feet, the fake feet, lasted like two steps. The strap broke off, and they could never do it. And they tried over and over, and they were unable to do that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of, and then he also said, "Oh, I got Bigfoots on." I mean, this guy had an insane amount of crazy stories. He was like, "I told Roger Patterson where to go." At one point, he claimed, "Yeah, that was my wife in the suit." Actually,
Mm-hmm.
he said his wife was Patty. He said that he talked to Bigfoots in caves. He said that he said all this crazy stuff, and but unfortunately, all that the press ran with was, "Oh, this guy made the footprints. That's it. End of story." And there were a lot of other footprints pulled from different sizes. Like you look at the Jerry Crew one, that one was huge. And but the thing with them is that they all show the same anatomical structures. And even in the prints that do appear flat, still the way that they push off still shows that like mid-tarsal break. So um you can tell like from the ground up, the way Patty's built is, it all makes sense. It's all intertwined. Like for example, that mid, and it's all the video matches up with the anatomical structures that we see in the foot.
Mhm.
For example, like if she's pushing off with half of her foot, well, that would mean that her calf muscle is going to work differently than ours. We push off with the palm of our foot, right? So, but that we push off with a very small portion of our foot. Our calf muscle is high and tight. So Patty's was pushing off with more of her forefoot. So her calf muscle was low and big. And if you watch that video, she's got low and wide calf muscles, which makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
And all the way up, big thigh muscles, big butt muscles. Like one thing is a chain reaction to the next. So it's pretty neat what's on camera. But I think that one footprint that they really got the mid tarsal break on, she stepped on some sort of like a branch or something. But what it showed was like even with that divot in the middle, the foot flexed in the middle right over it, instead of going like this and then stepping over it. Like it flexed right in the middle. So I think that one was why it was so important. There were like, I don't know how many tracks were pulled from Patty, but there were a few. Patterson took a couple, and then a guy named Bob Titmus, a taxidermist, came in and he took a couple. He took the ones that Roger was like, those are bad. Roger wanted nice, flat, beautiful footprints
Yeah.
to cast, and there were another ones that were like half prints and not as pretty. And Bob Titmus cast those, and he's actually the one that has the one with the big mid tarsal break. So pretty
Mm-hmm.
cool.
I think that more people would believe in Bigfoot if there weren't as many hoaxes, because um, people who don't believe in Bigfoot, their excuse is always that um, there's no evidence, or that people are always hoaxing them. And if there were no hoaxes, then I think there would be legitimate proof that Bigfoot exists. And I've talked to some friends that also believe in Bigfoot, and they say that they think that at some point people all admit that Bigfoot has to exist. And so I think there's a possibility that it'll be brought to the public's attention, and that it'll be proven real at some point um, in the unforeseen future. But what do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I kind of don't blame those people. I mean, if you're a skeptic, you're not really into Bigfoot, you've never had an interest in it, well, your automatic answer would be, there's no evidence. I haven't seen any, because none of it's been presented in school books or anything like that, right? And then when you look stuff up, they're right. Like I would say the mass majority of Bigfoot stuff is hoax. They're all hoaxes. Whether you see pictures of bushes with pareidolia, fake footprints, fake animal calls, Bigfoot calls that turn out to be animals, or sometimes misconceptions where people say, oh, it's a vocalization and it's actually coyotes. I don't blame them. It takes a lot of digging to find actual evidence or actual people that have had actual experiences that you can believe. So yeah, until something happens, I think it's just always going to be that way. I just don't see it changing until you have somebody pulls up like a body part or something like that. I think it's always going to be just the way it is. And it's kind of to bring more of a more scientific studies. I'm trying to think of a way to word this, to bring more people from the scientific realm to really take a look into it. It's going to take a lot more people being great ambassadors. So, I mean, if you speak to, Joe Blow off the street that says, oh yeah, I saw one time, someone's not going to take that as seriously. But if you listen to somebody go, yeah, I got these footprints, this is what they show. And, like a Cliff Brackman, he's going to go off, and you're going to walk away from him going, wow, these things are probably real. They're just not getting the justice they deserve.
Yeah, definitely. And so what do you think is the best argument for Bigfoot's existence? Would you say it's from films such as the Patterson Gimlin film, or do you think it's more from what people find on the field?
I would point to everything altogether. You have to clump it all together. You have to take everything that's been legitimized, from the Patterson film to footprints to the thousands of years of Native American folklore, not folklore, tribal like traditions. I mean, you go up here to Porterville in California, up here for about 3.5 hours from me, there's a rock, and it's called Painted Rock, and it's on the Toole Indian Reservation. And they estimate that to be about 1,000 years old. And it's a story of their creation, but they have these paintings, you probably have maybe seen them. It's these paintings of Sasquatch, and they call it Hairy Man pictographs, right? Yeah. And so you take that mixed with the Patterson Gimlin film, mixed with all the accounts, like thousands and thousands of reports, I think you take all those and accumulate them. And that's what should show that Bigfoot is real. It's not one particular instance for me. It's everything together, and I always ask skeptics, how many Bigfoot reports, out of the thousands and thousands of Bigfoot reports, out of all the Native American stories, out of the handful of film, how many of those have to be real for Bigfoot to be real? And the answer is one. One story is absolutely real, well, then Bigfoot's real. Yeah. And that's kind of a hard pill to swallow for some people, but it only takes one story to be legit. One of that wide variety of things to be real, for Bigfoot to be real. And I think there's just an ample amount of things like that make it real.
Yeah, and I think there's also a lot of people out there who've seen a Bigfoot and accept that it's real. But I think that's another argument, because a lot of those people are going to be viewed as crazy if they say that they believe in Bigfoot. So, yeah.
Yeah. There are definitely a lot of people that choose to remain anonymous. And sometimes it makes it harder because you have legitimate people, sometimes okay, I got a perfect story for that. There was a couple volunteers when I was camped out in Sequoia once at just a public campground, and they were coming around just checking on everybody. Hey, you guys okay? You guys doing all right? And just explaining the rules and all that stuff. And then they'd go on to the next one. Well, I always throw it out there with the Forest Service. Yeah, anybody seen Bigfoot? And these two, I didn't expect this answer, but the two girls go, ha ha ha. Well, and then they look at each other. Well, there's that one with, you know, so-and-so, and things got kind of quiet. And I go, oh, what happened? And they go, and they were kind of reluctant to tell the story, but apparently they started telling me that a female ranger was way out, God knows where, doing what. And she was working, and that she saw something kind of paralleling her and then run down the mountain, and it was humanoid. And she came back and started telling, you know, her supervisors, and wanted to file like some sort of report and do some kind of paperwork, and wanted to know what she needs to do because it just freaked her out. And these are the volunteers telling me the story, and they're both looking at each other, nodding throughout the story and telling each other, like, they weren't making it up on the spot. It's a story that they heard and that they were wondering about, and they both chime in with like little details. But ultimately, they said that that one of their bosses, one of the higher ups, and I'm not saying this is like a conspiracy theory or anything like that of government trying to keep this thing secret, but he just said, hey, while you're in uniform and you have that badge on, just don't talk about it. Mm-hmm. It's not something you want to put out there. So that's one instance right there where, you know, somebody legitimate saw something out there in the woods, and they're not supposed to talk about it because it would, it's not something official that the National Park Service condones. So yeah, I think we see a lot of those. Sometimes people don't want to talk about it because it makes them look unprofessional. Yeah, and then also not everyone's educated on what Bigfoot is. You see something like that, you start telling people, and when people start asking more questions, they're like, I don't know. And then they go, they probably saw something else. You know, it's hard to talk about when you don't know about something.
Well, where do you think is the best place to go squatching? Because you've been to the Sierra Mountains and all these places. Where do you think would be the most, which place do you think you would recommend most highly for squatching?
Oh man, well, the Pacific Northwest is probably the best place, but that's a long range. So it comes down to, like, there are a handful of people that do research in their area, and a lot of times they don't want to talk about it, or they don't want to tell you where their area is, which I totally understand, because if they're onto something, they don't want to share their information, right? So I got invited up to go to like Plumas National Forest, and there are a couple locations up there where people have recorded audio. One guy recorded them on thermal imager, and I'd say about maybe 5 miles as a crow flies, I had a sighting through a thermal imager there. So I know that spot, Plumas National Forest, is a great area. It's a place that runs along the Yuba River. You can't go wrong with places like Bluff Creek, you know, Willow Creek, that entire area, you know, they're still having sightings here and there. But while those guys would say, you know, things have kind of slowed down in that area, in the Bluff Creek area. A little further north, you're still getting some pretty fresh reports. People are still pulling prints. This last time I was up there, a gentleman said on his way out that they saw a really nice half a print, and that they were positive it wasn't bear. So yeah, that whole area. California has this, like, you have California, there's this, like, they call it the California deltoid. So like a deltoid muscle, you know, you got I don't have a deltoid muscle like that, but you got the California deltoid, which runs from the coastal redwoods, and it kind of comes up and it comes back down into the Sierras. And I think that there's some sort of like a migrational pattern throughout there, because you're getting reports from the Plumas National Forest all the way down into as far as Sequoia National Park and Sequoia National Forest, where those pictographs are. They're still getting reports from there. So I'd say most of California in the mountains, but as far as spots that I know that are kind of active, I think you can't go wrong with those couple places. But there are a lot of places that people haven't hit, that people don't go, that there are no researchers that go to, and you know, there's only like these very few claims, and there's no one researching out there. So I would encourage people to hit places like the the Eastern Sierra Nevada mountains, up into like the Kennedy Meadows area and all that stuff. If you're familiar with that, that wouldn't be a bad place to look either, since there's not a lot of researchers going there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dylan and I, we've really only been Sasquatch hunting in 2 spots, Virginia and Tennessee. But we've had better luck in Virginia over Tennessee. But I think the Sierra Mountains is something that I definitely do want to check out someday. I think that'd be really cool. And there's a lot of other Sasquatching sites out there. I think probably the best ones, Northern California, Oregon, Washington, like the northwest of the United States, I think is probably where you're gonna get most Bigfoot action out there. But
yeah, have you guys ever been out there?
No, we haven't. Or at
I
least
No?
I haven't.
not squatching, but I did go to Oregon.
Mhm.
At least 2 years ago, I think. It's a
Yeah.
really cool place.
And like when you go there, yes or no, I don't know. It's like there's forest everywhere. Like, in my opinion, if something wanted to hide, it could hide in probably the same square mile for like half its life and not be found. It is
Yeah.
extremely thick rainforest out there, and then everything's straight up and straight down. Like at least like in the Willow Creek, Bluff Creek area, everything goes straight up and straight down. There's like these outcut roads, and I always thought that my perspective on where to search for footprints or where to think I'm going to see one completely changed when I visited out there, because the Sierras, they'll go up and then they kind of plateau, and you have um, these long flat spots for miles and miles where you can kind of walk around. But in Bluff Creek, you have everything's kind of straight up and straight down with these roads cutting through. And it hit me like, wow, looking at the Patterson Gimlin film and looking at the terrain, these things are completely built to just scale these mountains like that. In Oklahoma, you asked about Oklahoma, there's a lady named Kathy Strain, and she's an archaeologist for I've never talked to her, but I've seen her all over the place. She's an archaeologist for the Forest Service, and she actually did a big thing on the hairy man pictographs. She's in charge of like talking to the Native Americans and jotting down all their stories, right? But she's really interested in Bigfoot. She went out to Oklahoma, and she finally, after all the years having been into Bigfoot, had a sighting. And she said that they ran up the mountain. It looked like a bungee cord went off, is what she said. So she said that they skyrocketed up the mountain. So these things can supposedly scale mountainsides far better than we imagined, really, really fast. And when I went out to Bluff Creek, it's like you look at how inclined these places are, and you're like, we could never get up there. We could never get up there. If something could scale that, they could just live right there on that ridge for as long as they wanted to, and they'd never be found. And I think that applies to the entire Pacific Northwest. So
Yeah, it's really crazy what they can do and how long they can stay hidden for. But it's very interesting. So, all right, guys, we're gonna take a short break and we will be right back.
So the next question I want to ask is, what are some tips or, I guess, warnings that you would give someone getting interested in cryptozoology?
To not be discouraged by not finding anything. It takes a long time. Out of all the times that I've been up, I have a very small handful of experiences. And I think I see so many people do this for a few years and then they throw in the towel. They're just done and they move on to like some other subject, which there's nothing wrong with that. But I would say if you expect any results, you're gonna have to stick to it for a long time. Like I said,
Like
there's
fishing.
It's like fishing, exactly. But once you find that spot, maybe you're gonna start catching. I mean, maybe you'd be happy you keep going to that spot over and over, and maybe you start actually pulling up like evidence or something, or finding more things or hearing stuff. but
Definitely.
it takes a long time. It doesn't, it's not something instantaneous. You don't just go out there, do a call and get one back. And it's like, oh, cool. So I think that's one of the things, you know, and also critical thinking. Always look at both sides of a story. If you're gonna take like a report down, or you're hearing somebody else's claim or someone else presenting evidence that you're interested in, look at both sides of the claim. Try and debunk it. Try as hard as you can to debunk it. If all the evidence is there, try and debunk it. Like the Patterson film, there's so many details of further. There's an ample amount of details. So much so that I think that it would have been debunked had one thing been way off. So yeah, critical thinking skills and not being discouraged by not finding anything. Just keep at it.
Definitely. I think it's really important to just not give up if you don't find anything. Because like I said, it's like fishing. You just have to keep trying until you find that one spot that gives you a lot of luck. And so, like I said earlier, what do you think it would take for a Bigfoot to be proven real? Do you think it would take just a really high quality photo, or do you think it would actually take like a body of a Bigfoot or something like that to?
It would probably have to be a body, but I think there would be an exception made with the quality of cameras that are around today. Like if you filmed the Patterson Gimlin film with like 4K camera today, I don't know. I don't see many people going, it's a guy in a suit.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to look pretty legit and it's going to be hard to fake.
Definitely.
So I think that I don't think all these, I don't think like a DNA study would prove anything, because the general public doesn't understand it enough. Doesn't understand DNA is really complicated. I don't think the general public would understand it enough, and myself included, to be able to authenticate it based on a DNA study. So I think it would take either a body part, or crystal clear film showing not just a blur in the forest or something tucked behind a bush, but something walking and giving you a lot of data.
Yeah, definitely. Dylan, you have anything?
No, I don't have anything to add.
Yeah, so what other, like you said, we looked on your Instagram recently, and I want to pull up this one photo they found interesting just so I can make sure I get the
cool, sure,
right picture. And let me just find it real quick. Yeah, so you went camping at the Patterson film site, is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, me and a couple friends
Yes.
back down into it, stay the night.
Yeah, how did that go overall? Like, what was the experience of that?
Oh man, it was really cool. I had been there once the year before, and I went there once, and I had my heart set. I said, I got to spend the night down here. This is something cool. Yeah. It was a kind of a personal achievement type of deal. So I went back with a couple friends who backpack, and that I backpack with here in the Southern California mountains. And it's an easy 1.5 mile walk down there if you follow their little makeshift trail that they kind of carved out. It's not too bad. It's pretty simple. Like I think Bob Gimlin did it a few years ago, and he's in his like mid 80s. So, but we set up our tents. Oh man, I want to say like 10 feet from where Roger Patterson's position was, where he knelt down and filmed Patty. And we spent the night there. It gets really dark a lot faster than anywhere else, because it's like we're already in the dark with headlamps up, and we're looking up and we can see bright sunlight in the trees up on the hill. So yeah, it gets really dark in there. Plus the trees, you have the surrounding big pine trees, but you have these smaller trees that have grown up since, and they have small branches, and they just black everything out. And yeah, we were right there. You got Bluff Creek flowing right behind you. That night, unfortunately, we didn't hear or see anything. I had my night vision out, was looking all over the place, but didn't see anything. But it was just surreal to be there. We had street tacos for dinner. Like we did all our cooking stuff. So street tacos, and for dinner, and yeah, it was just a neat experience to be able to say that you camped at the Patterson Gimlin film site. But as far as finding anything, we didn't really find anything. But it was really cool experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about other Bigfoots related to the Sasquatch that are around the world, such as the Yeti in the
Well, yeah,
Himalayas?
you got like the Longleafy in Russia and the Yeren in China, and it's kind of funny because like if you do some reading around, it seems like the Park Service in China is very open to the fact that the Yeren could be out there, and the amnesty. There's reports from like around World War One, I believe, where some Russians were moving through an area and they had what looked like cave people, and they gave descriptions of it. Cave people come out of a cave at them that they had gunned down. It's like this story, I think that just like people, I think they vary too in hair color and size.
Yeah.
According to their thousands of years of adaptation to their particular region. So, and it might be in the United States because you're getting consistent reports from Florida about what a skunk ape looks like. You're getting consistent reports over what a Sasquatch in Pacific Northwest looks like. And, central United States has their strange versions to the grassman and the wood booger. But yeah, they can definitely vary just like every other species of everything does.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about people trying to shoot down Bigfoot? Because there's a lot of TV shows, like there's this one where there's these guys that go out in the woods with they got their big ARs on them and they're trying to find Bigfoot to shoot him. What do you think about that?
Oh man, I'm on the fence about it. You don't want Bigfoot to get shot. Absolutely not. But like you see with other species, sometimes if you put one down, they bring up this, now it's real. Now they know it exists, and they're able to set up some sort of protection for the rest of them so no other ones get shot. I think that would be the good part of it. I know a couple particular instances where people have claimed that they shot a Sasquatch. I don't know how believable it is. I've listened to this story in high detail, but I'm still on the fence about that. And I'm on the fence about if you should shoot one or not. I don't know. Bob Gimlin says, no, I wouldn't shoot one. He had it dead to rights right in front of him with his, with his rifle up. And he said that it looked too human, and that if he saw one again, he would probably act very nice and actually try to have it come to him and communicate with it. Probably try to smile to not look like it's. So to him, it looked extremely human. He sounded like he's hunted big game and everything, and he sounded like he couldn't pull the trigger because it looked too human. And I wonder if all these people that say that they'd pull the trigger, I wonder what they'd say if they actually saw one. Maybe their opinion would change. But yeah, I don't know if they should. I don't know. It's just kind of one of those things.
Yeah, I think people that also have say they've shot a Bigfoot, they probably would have brought Bigfoot in versus just like burying it. I also see that you have the Bigfoot Society t-shirt on.
Oh yeah, got this from Jeremiah. That's right. Great podcast.
Yeah, this podcast is really cool.
Yeah. If you shoot a Bigfoot, do not bury it. Yeah, probably take a picture. You already took it down, so.
Yeah, like you said, you shouldn't shoot a Bigfoot, but if you do, then keep some record of it.
Yeah, you already shot it. Might as well have it serve its master purpose.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, anyone else have any other comments before we head out? No. Jonathan, any comments for you?
Not really. You guys are pretty young. You guys got a cool podcast going.
Thank you.
Keep it up. Keep it up. When I was 14, I was doing some crazy stuff, ditching school and in the wrong place. You guys are light years ahead of me. By the time you guys are 10 years from now, you guys are going to be the master researchers, man, you know? So
Thank you.
Thank you.
keep it up, man. Keep it up. Always stay interested, use your critical thinking skills. And yeah, you guys are doing real cool, real good.
Thank you. All right, guys. Thanks everyone for listening. You can follow Jonathan on Western Bigfoot Exploration on Instagram. And you can follow us on Squatch and Such. You can send your questions to us on squatchandsuch@gmail.com. That is SQUATCHNSUCH@gmail.com. And you can also send us requests to be on Coffee and Cryptids as well. Next week, we're going to talk about the best and worst evidence for Bigfoot, so stay tuned for that, and see you all in the next episode.